Welcome everyone, KT here, and in today's video I kind of want to talk about indie games and what maybe holds the indie market a little bit back. I was talking about this in another video, but it's not necessary to watch the other video. I just said in this other video I will probably make a video dedicated to these points I personally believe is holding the indie market back, and that's important to say. That's my personal opinion and my personal observation. And I wrote down 4 points. That doesn't mean there couldn't be more points or that these points are 100% correct. And the four things I kind of found. Let's just take the obvious one uh, away from the beginning. And the obvious one is money. However, it would be a little bit dishonest to call this just money, because when we look at crowdfunding and how much money crowdfunding um, makes for games every year and so on, and when we look at games like Star Citizen and so on, then like I said, it would be a little bit dishonest to just call this a money problem, because there's definitely the possibility out there to make money with to get make money for funding your games. However, there are other problems that come with that, and so don't want to call it only a money problem. I will call it a resource problem. There, because there is also a problem that you may don't not have contact with the news tech companies and access to the news technologies or anything like that. Things that AAA companies probably have. You may not have access to their experts that can uh, train your employees to learn these new technologies and so on. So I kind of want to call the first point not a money problem, but more a resource problem. So it's not only money, it's also a lack of know-how and maybe a lack of technology, or at least the newest technology or anything like that. But still, of course, yes, for many indie games, money is of course a problem to get enough money for their funding and so on, and also money management and stuff like that. But that was more or less the obvious point. I rushed a little bit through, so we can get to the next point. The next point is nostalgia and trend chasing. At first, this may not sound that the two things um, are the same, because they aren't. One is, hey, remember what games, what do you remember this retro game and what it made good, and the other thing is, what is the newest trend. However, even if these both things are kind of the opposite of each other, the result is then kind of the same thing. It sounds a little bit harsh, but it ends up into a lack of ideas, lack of innovation, lack of creativity. If you just copy paste games, people will notice this and they won't be so fond of your games if they know the game that you just copied. And we've seen a lot of examples like this. When we kind of go for the nostalgia factor, then two games I remember good are Mighty Number 9 and Yooka-Laylee, both crowdfunded games, and both games that got forgotten pretty fast because the only thing they had was this kind of nostalgia factor, that um, this kind of factor, hey, do you remember this game, and that don't bring something new to the um, into the mix or anything like that. Of course, maybe Mighty Number 9 is remembered a little bit more, but not because of good things, more because of the Kickstarter disaster. And when we look at trend chasing, having the obvious one with Battle Royale games and MMOs that fail There are many examples, but you can also look at more indie projects, and when we look at indie games, at maybe at indie horror games, there we see a lot of copycats and so on. And that's kind of what I mean with trend chasing. When FNAF was very successful, it started a lot of copycats that tried to take the FNAF mechanics and make their own horror game out of it. And then there are all the Slenderman clones and so on. And when we are finally through the FNAF and the Slenderman clones, then we get a lot of games that are just on the haze jump scare, on the jump that just build their games on the jump scare factor, and that gets old pretty fast. So it's not like there are not good indie horror games out there, but it's very difficult to find them because you have to go through so many clones and so on, and that's kind of the problem here. What I want to say with this here is not, you don't have to invent the wheel new. That's not the idea here, but if you want to create your own game and you may not don't know what exactly you want to make, think about the genre you will really like, shooter, RPG, or anything like that, and then think about what could I give new to this genre, to give the players a new experience and not just copy paste it. But again, nostalgia and trend chasing is not something bad just by its own, but you have to make it your own, and not just copy and paste it. I hope this kind of makes sense, and we can jump to the third point. And the third point is a little bit a sad one. It goes also a little bit into the second point. It's a sad one because there is not much we can do against it. It's not our fault really. And the third point is about opportunists, or you can also call them drifters, that just want to make a short buck and don't care about the consequences for others or anything like that. These are people who create assets flips, like I said, or just copy paste an already successful game, like FNAF or Slenderman, and then just shamelessly copying it with some assets, with some byte assets, and then sell this under a name that's probably pretty close to the original one or anything like that. And these games are probably often buggy, broken, or not working correctly, and that's a problem because if you're a consumer and you buy one of these games and you get burned by the game because it's not good or anything like that, then this will look bad for the whole indie market, and not only for that particular games. The same thing is with, there are many crowdfunding schemes, Kickstarters that are made and then not fulfilled and so on. And again, this is bad for the whole indie market, because if you are one that paid money for a crowdfunded game or bought a game that is not working or anything like that, so got burned by it, then you're likely not trusting any other Kickstarter game or other indie game fast again. So you lose a lot of goodwill of people who would like to invest in crowdfunding and in other indie games in general and stuff like that. And like I said, this is a problem for the whole indie market, not only for the ones that do this stuff. And the last point, and I put it at last because I think this is something unlike the third point, this is not something that kind of is not our fault. This is something we all can work on. And this may sound a little bit harsh, but please explain it. Let me explain it. And my fourth point is a lack of ambition. And I say it's a little bit harsh because it's maybe not lack of ambition, but maybe it's more a lack of willing to take risks. And you have to take risks to kind of get forward to evolve from where you are now. So if I will try to explain this, what I mean with this, because I see so many short games and smaller developer teams, so on, that work on shorter game experience and so on, in the hope that they make a good name, creating a label so they can then jump on to make bigger games, longer game experience and stuff like that. And the problem I see here is that if you don't take risk, you just wait for this for luck, kind of for this lucky successful game that will give you the opportunity to jump. Because the problem is if you just make smaller games, you will the money you will make from smaller games will always just be enough for making another smaller game and so on. It probably will in most cases not be enough to make the jump into the next thing. And that with that I mean it's maybe less lack ambition, because maybe the ambition to make bigger games, longer games and so on is there, but because it's smaller dev teams and so on don't want to take the risk and hope to kind of grind, let's call it grind, in small steps to a bigger game, they will probably stagnate at some point. And then it's just kind of, like I said, waiting for this lucky, successful game that maybe will change things. But however, this won't come for most indie dev teams. This won't not come. At some point, you have to take the risk and create something bigger, even if maybe the funding is not there yet or anything like that. And I understand absolutely if you have a team, if you have to worry about your employees and so on. I completely understand that you don't want to take these risks and so on. Also, on the other hand, if you just want to create a smaller games, short games or anything like that, then that is completely fine. Fine too. I don't want to say anything about that. Also, maybe I'm maybe the wrong person that should talk about that, because there's nothing I can show you. However, I personally don't think that lack of ambition is my problem, and it's my philosophy in doing something kind of goes into these steps. And what I mean with that is when I'm working on a game right now, and what I want to do is to make the best game ever. And this sounds maybe a little bit crazy and so on, but let me explain it a little bit. What I mean with that is that the goal is not as important as the way you take. And I'm 100% sure that, no, I'm not 100% sure, but I really believe if your ambition is strong enough and you really work hard to create an impossible, you work towards an impossible goal, you may not reach this impossible goal. However, you will most probably reach a goal that is higher than every realistic goal you may made up before. I hope this kind of makes sense what I mean with that. And of course you can now look at my game and say, that this will never be the best game ever. And it's also there's also of course the problem that best game ever is not an objective thing, because there are different tastes, and so people will find this game better and another game better. But I didn't say I will create this in one day. This is your ambition has to last for a very long time, and to create a good game, not only a short game but maybe a longer game experience and so on. It takes time, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of ambition and so on, and you won't do this in one day, 1 week, not 1 month, and probably not in 1 year. And with that I want to end this video. I hope you found this point interesting. If you want to add a point or talk about the point, you can do this in the comment section. And with that, thank you for watching. Hello everyone, I'm working right now on a turn-based RPG. It's a game I'm building myself from scratch. I'm doing the models, the animations, the textures, and of course the scripting and everything myself. You can check it out on itch.io or on GameJolt. The links are in the description. There is a demo version that is focusing on the combat system and the progression system, and you can download it for free, and feedback is always welcome. Thank you.